Okay, for any writer, the thesis is extremely important. For writers, right, the text talks about how it helps writers plan an essay, helps writers organize ideas in an essay, and it helps writers unify all the ideas in an essay. Once you know your thesis, that's your building plan. That's your layout for the whole rest of your essay. And for a reader, it identifies the main idea of an essay, it guides the reader through the essay, and it clarifies the subject and the focus of an essay. So whether you need the roadmap because you're writing it or you need the roadmap because you're reading it, a thesis is very important to either the reader or the writer. Now, of course, I'm going to backtrack a little bit here. Now, here's the problem with a thesis statement. Your thesis statement originally is going to have to be tentative. Most writers that I know, they start on that roadmap, right? They start in one place and they think they know where they're going, but it ends up that they're kind of off on some side road and they end up someplace else. Well, that's the problem with thesis statements. You may think that you're going to write an essay about a time in college when someone you know next to you is cheating, like the example in the textbook. And then when you start to write that essay, you really figure out that you're not really talking about the cheating so much as you're talking about your issue with the professor and the lack of discipline in the classroom. So your thesis statement, once you started writing, may change because you're going to realize that your focus changed. Don't be afraid of that. I like to use a thesis as a starting point and jumping off, but then it's okay if your thesis changed. Just make sure, though, that you go back to that thesis statement and you change it if you change focus. So what some students do is they have that original thesis statement, right, and then they take that side road and those off-ramps, but then they never actually go back and change the thesis, and so the reader feels like they don't understand where you're going. And so you have to make sure that eventually you match up the thesis with the rest of your essay. A thesis statement can be implied or it can be explicit. I think the more advanced writer that you are, the more subtle your thesis kind of can be inside of an essay. At first, sometimes it's just easier to have a very explicit thesis statement. It's very organized, it's easy to find. But as you grow as a writer, you'll be able to kind of put that thesis statement in a little bit more smoothly, weave it right into the paper so that, yes, the reader can identify it, but it's Alright, there are three types of thesis statements. Informative, listing the major points you'll discuss or presenting an objective overview of the essay. Expressive, conveying a mood or an impression. And persuasive, taking a strong stand or outlining the position you will argue. These thesis statements, though, they don't exist on islands. Okay? They can be blended, and very often they are blended. So don't be afraid if you feel like your thesis statement is both informative and expressive, or it's persuasive and informative. This is very often the case. Alright, so you might be sick of me talking about the thesis statement, but the thesis is very important. And so just really quick, here's a brief checklist. Yes, it's in the textbook, but I really wanted to emphasize this information about the thesis. Usually a thesis statement is what confuses students the most. So, first of all, do you state your thesis in one complete, concise statement? Again, there's a slight caveat here, right? Good writers don't always have one complete, concise statement. It might be a few sentences. If that happens, the world inevitably probably will not end, but if you can keep it to one statement, that's good. Does your thesis indicate your purpose? Do we know what's going to happen? Is your thesis suited to your assignment? Does your thesis clearly convey the main idea you intend to support in your essay? And does your thesis suggest how you will organize your essay?